I suck at Jiu Jitsu. How do I suck less at Jiu Jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
Ladies and gentlemen, the diabolical leader of the Head Knock
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 210 of the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show. So today, if you guys saw on the gram, I said this on my Instagram and the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show's Instagram. We didn't do a Tuesday episode this week. We didn't do one of our interviews, but they will be back next week. And really the reason why I didn't do it, I could have gotten one out. I had an episode and it is amazing, but it just needed a little bit of editing and I wanted to make the episode perfect. I just didn't think it was a good call to not do that. And so that's going to be out next Tuesday, but I also promised that this was going to be a weird one, and it is. This is going to be kind of an episode on being able to look at what you're doing, look at a few other indicators, and predict where you're going to be at in 5 to 10 years. Even predict where you're going to be at next year, which is probably a little easier to do. And we're going to look at all that. I think you guys are really going to like how we look at it. I just think this episode is going to be really surprising to a lot of people. I just think there are a lot of people that could know what they're doing right now is wrong, and this will show you how to do that. Here's the problem. This episode is going to require the practice of self-awareness. It is going to require you being aware of yourself, and that is very hard. It is very hard to actually be aware of what you think, what you believe, what you do, and that's really what this episode is like. This is going to be the most important ingredient for this episode. Yes, the knowledge, the ideas that we talk about are going to be important, but the only way to implement anything that is talked about in this episode is going to be by being more self-aware, or being self-aware in general. And other notes, we don't have great lighting on the show right now, but we're back on video. Last week we didn't even have video going. I had a few problems with my system of recording things and got it figured out though. And so that is, I'm glad that we actually have video again. But here is the interesting thing about all that. Oh, also, little note too for people watching, my rock on, my dog pound hand signal is also not lit up too. Everything will be back to normal next week. The podcast will look professional again, and then hopefully it should be consistent after that. And those Tuesday interviews, I think they're going to be consistent after that, as long as equipment agrees, and then we can get everything on our scheduled and figured out the way we want to. But regardless of all that, you guys are going to really love next Tuesday's episode with Miles Lucas. It is on, it's on breath work, but just saying it's on breath work is probably an oversimplification. It is not just on breath work. It is on, dealing with competition anxiety, being able to control your anxiety in general, being able to control your cardio in rounds. There's so many cool things that Miles talks about. If you guys, I don't know, if you watch on something or listen on something that lets you have reminders, get your reminder set. You do not want to miss that. I've also been practicing the breath work that he talked about on the show since 2019 when he talked about it. And I talk about some of my results from it, and Miles breaks down the times that it went right and the times that it went wrong. I can't stress to you guys enough how crazy that episode is, because I run out of questions 10 minutes in. Miles knows his stuff so much that I was hoping that it would, doing 3 years of breath work was going to allow me to at least conversate about it. And it was just amazing how much Miles knew. And there was just even a point in the podcast, and I haven't done this in 200 plus episodes, I actually stopped and go, holy cow, dude. Where do you want to go with the episode? Where should we go next with this episode? Because I don't even have anything to add. I don't even know what to follow up with. He just explained things so clearly and concisely. And then he actually did a seminar at my gym, the second breathwork seminar he's done at my gym. And dude, I got so much out of it. Even though I knew a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the techniques that he was showing, I've used for the last couple of years for competition anxiety especially. And he's added to them and added to the thoughts of them. And just like Logan got to produce that episode. Again, Logan and I do breath work all the time, talk about breath work all the time. He was on a different level. It was like white belts in breath work talking to a black belt for the first time. Even though I've talked to him before, it's just been years. And man, he has really sharpened his craft in those last few years. Highly recommend that episode. But without further ado, I predict that you guys should watch that episode. But without further ado, let's just predict your jiu-jitsu future in general. This is like the longest intro I've ever done. Let's go ahead and move on. All right, guys, let's get into today's episode. So today's episode was inspired by my boy Bionic Rob. You guys have met him. He's been on the show, and he gave me he actually printed out 2 pages of a book and highlighted a few things and just said, hey, I think this is great I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show episode content. And like I tell you guys, Rob has been responsible for more episode ideas than anybody but me on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So I read into it, decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I really loved what I read because it does fit a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And it's just about this idea of, can you see into the future? And then also, just a little note, people recommend podcasts and guests and all kinds of different things to me for podcast inspiration, right? And I try to pay attention to those and listen to those. But the chances that you're going to get me to read a whole book, or the chances that you are going to get me to listen to an hour and a half podcast, something that's a huge commitment of time, they're probably pretty low. Okay, they're probably pretty low. So I think it's probably best to, if you know me, to pull a Rob and print out 2 pages and then highlight, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences. I can read 7 sentences, but I don't know if I'm trusting everybody else that much, to read a whole book. I would only be reading books all the time. And not that that's a bad thing, but I don't want to be a nerd. But let's look at, I'm just going to read the few things that Rob highlighted. And like I said, this is just about this idea that your daily routine predicts your future. And I actually have 2 other indicators. Daily routine is point 1 for us. And we're going to look at what daily routine is, what habits is. We're going to apply this to jiu-jitsu schedule, of course, like we always do. But we're going to look at it more from a habits perspective, and more for your habits. What you are doing daily is going to create the life that you have 5 years from now. Even a year from now, what you are doing daily is going to create that life. If you're eating terribly daily, you are going to deal with a life that is heavier a year from now, 5 years from now. You are going to probably deal with more health issues. It's a simple prediction of your future, right? Yet a lot of the time, most of us are just not self-aware enough to go, I know that my life, it could be ruined by how much I eat, how little I exercise, how ... these things that I do. But it is so hard to just stop doing those things, right? And so let me just read these thoughts and then we'll get into the actual episode, okay? So this is from a book by Matthew Kelly, and here are the highlighted sentences. Thoughts create actions, actions create habits, habits create character, and your character is your destiny. Later on, it says, what are your habits? What are things you do every day, every week or every month. If you can tell me what your habits are, I can tell you what your future looks like. And the last paragraph highlighted is by changing our habits, our lives change. Wait, oh, how? By changing our habits. Man, Rob, you should have highlighted the word how for me. But it's just talking about looking through the telescope of character and seeing if you can change your future. How? By changing your habits. Our lives change when our habits change. It is true that if you tell me what your habits are today, I can tell you what your future looks like. If you tell me what new habits you are going to put into place this year, I can tell you how your life will be different this year from what it was last year. And as simple as that is, as simple as you are going to be what you do today and what you did yesterday and what you do tomorrow, okay? What you do consistently. It is so easy to get out of that mindset. It is so easy to get, I just have to get it done mindset. If I just get my workout done at 1,000% today and I do all my heavy lifts, then it's just going to be, everything's going to be good. And you do that today and you work out at 100%. And then you go, because, I'm doing not saying anything negative about anybody or anything, but I'm doing the 75-day hard challenge. But here's the problem. On day 76, I stopped doing the challenge. And it was hard. It was frustrating. But it was this goal I had. I had this 75-day goal. And then you generally don't replace the obsessive workout and diet habits that you have created over these last 75 months or 75 days, 75 months, these last 75 days with anything else. You don't replace those habits at all. And then you expect that obsessiveness that you have developed to not turn into obsessively eating Krispy Kreme donuts. You were too focused on a goal. And again, I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm sure that so many people have had so much help from 75 Days Hard, right? This was just what was on the top of my head. I've never even done it, so I really shouldn't even be speaking about it in any sense on the podcast. But anything goal-oriented, I have been a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer for 7 years. And in those 7 years, I helped a lot of different people lose weight. Usually people that were, 40 and over lose weight. And how it was no one day fix. It was no, your workout today is gonna cut those calories that you ate all weekend. It was nothing like that. It was consistency. It was you show up to your workout 2 to 3 times per week. We make sure you get your workout 2 to 3 times per week. Each time we check in and I say, hey, what have you been eating? I check your habits and you would say, I've been really good. Nothing more we need to do. Have you been walking each day? That's the only other box to check on the 3W approach to fitness: weight training, walking, and watching your diet. And in that, they would go, oh yeah, I've been hitting my walk every day. Oh, you've been doing those habits. I don't even have to worry about you. Now, I always would have the people that would go, oh yeah. I'm down 7 pounds this week. Wait. Why are you down 7 pounds this week? Oh, because my wife and I have been riding our bikes and we rode 20 miles each day. Okay, that doesn't seem sustainable. That doesn't seem like a habit that you are going to be able to keep going. But by all means, the customer is always right. And what would happen with those people is they would a lot of times lose 70 pounds in the summer. And then they would gain 100 in the winter. Those are very excessive amounts, but those are the things that you see over and over. We do these things in jiu-jitsu. We do these things in every goal that we set in life. Is we get too focused on what life would be way down the road that we don't create the life that we need to get there, okay? Now let me actually talk about this episode at all, read any of the notes that I have. Okay, so I think we have explored the impact of daily habits on your jiu-jitsu progress. Let's look at it. Let's make sure to apply this directly to jiu-jitsu training, okay? If you are looking at your training schedule, and that's the term that we use, I think it's a good term. Everyone knows what we're talking about. But understanding a lot of times for most of us, our training schedule is our training habits, right? Because most jiu-jitsu schools have options to train in. You don't have to come to, okay, I only signed up for Monday, Wednesday, Saturday class. Some are like that. So then you probably have less options. But I think for most of us, it is like you have 6-7 days a week that you could train, or maybe even, twice a day, 14 sessions that you can choose from. But really, you can only fit 3 into a routine, or 5 into a routine, or 4, whatever, right? You can only fit a certain amount into a routine. And so often we see the guys that go, no, I'm going to fit all 14. And then they do it. And they can do it for 6 weeks. They can do it for 6 months sometimes. But at a point, it becomes very hard to hit 14 sessions. And at a point, a lot of times you're just trying to hit the sessions. You're not even focused or engaged in these sessions. You could be doing less and just making sure you're actually there. And so often, these are the guys that deal with injuries. And then they get injured, and then they come back, and then what? What do they do? We've met those people. You have too. They do the exact same thing. Maybe it's not number of training times. Maybe they train 3 days a week. They train 3 days a week, 3 times a week, and it is not too much on their body. But maybe the intensity of this training is too much. And again, every 6 weeks, every 6 months, they get injured. And then they do not change the habits that got them injured. They wait for the injury to heal, and then they go back to doing the same thing. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Most of us have some jiu-jitsu insanity. Most of us do. I know that I do, and I have only been self-aware of certain things enough to fix them. I'm sure that there are other things that I do that do not fit the goals that I have, and I'm not even self-aware enough to recognize them. Okay, so these things will be revealed to you slowly, usually by a friend. They're really hard to hear, usually by a coach. They're really hard to hear, sometimes by an enemy. They're really hard to hear. It is so hard to be self-aware. Maybe you guys just have less ego than me. Maybe it's not hard for you to be self-aware. But I know for me, it is so hard to actually be aware of my actions and my words and my attitude that I bring to things. It is very hard to be aware of those things, okay? One of the best ways to not have to be aware of them is to have great habits, because those things will be more consistent and you won't have to be aware of them. But to form great habits, you kind of have to be aware. So let's just kind of look. So I've looked at bad habits, right? Of the habits of training too much, the habits of just all the things that we get frustrated in the jiu-jitsu space, and don't really know how to fix. Most of the time, it has to do with our habits. I'll highlight one more negative habit, okay? And then we'll look at a few positive daily routine jiu-jitsu habits and how those could predict a better future for you. Eventually, at the end of this episode, we're going to look at this more generally, and we're going to say, okay, well, how does all of this apply at once, okay? But until we get there, we're just going to look at these in parts, okay? So the first predictor is daily routine. You could be training too much, training too hard, right? Your volume and intensity could be off. We have a simplifying jiu-jitsu product. The working title is the strength of the dog pound, and it is about the strength training method that we've been using my whole life, but I've really been focused on over the last 2 years. And I'll tell you guys some of my results when we start to look at positive daily habits. And I'm going to really highlight myself, because I was doing certain things that were terrible for me, or it just didn't fit what I wanted to do when I first started recording this podcast 200 episodes ago. And I'm going to be able to highlight those things and say, hey, I fixed them because of the right mentors, the right whatever, and right routines, and this is the result. And so it'll give you a little more information on like, okay, Josh, you've been only negative to us this whole episode about the things we're doing wrong. Let's look at the future predictors of things you're doing right. But first, let's make sure that we know that there are other ways of just not understanding volume and intensity. But anyway, that strength training for the dog pound or dog pound strength training, whatever we're going to call it, probably is going to have nothing to do with any of those words. But it's a Steve McKinney 30 plus year of strength training athletes, training people of all ages, training his professional athlete son, if there's such thing as a jiu-jitsu professional athlete, to be able to compete with steroid users at the highest level and do it naturally. But that whole entire thing is based on these concepts of volume and intensity and understanding that most people have no idea what those things mean. Not even just in jiu-jitsu, not even just on the mat in live training, but also in the weight room. In most things, understanding volume and intensity is going to be huge. And we're going to highlight that a lot. I just wanted to make sure to throw that in early in the podcast because we're going to highlight volume and intensity a lot. But anyway, now let's look at some positive impacts, some positive habits that you could have. And I want to look at some things that I was doing that were not positive for me. One of the first things was how I would wake up in the morning. Okay. So generally I would wake up, and I'm highlighting like 2019 Josh, who was riddled with injury. And like all of 18, all of 19, I was basically injured to a point where I literally couldn't do jiu-jitsu at 100%. And I had grown up on the mat. I was, what was I in 2018? 5 years ago, I was 24. And my routine was this. I would wake up at 4 and I would be a personal trainer. And I would be a personal trainer for 4 or 5 hours. So I'd start at 5, I would get off 6 hours, probably get off at 10. Okay. I start at like 4:30, maybe 5, get off 10:30. Okay. Then from there, I would drive to my coach's gym and train open mat, just do live rounds. Then I would come back to, sometimes I had personal training then to do, but usually I had a little bit of a break from there, like 4-hour, 5-hour break, where then I would go into kids class, teen class, and then adult class. Okay. I would teach all 3, and then I would train with my adults. And I would do that basically every day. So I would get home and eat dinner at 8, go to bed at 9, and then wake up the next day at 4. And it was possible. I was able to do it, but I was also trying to compete as a brown belt into black belt, okay? But at a level where everyone is now professional. And it would be sustainable for a period of time. And then I would usually get a small injury, and it would be a training injury. It wouldn't be like I didn't tap to something. It would just be I stepped and my foot didn't do what it was supposed to and it got hurt, or my hand or whatever. And it was 6 weeks to 6 months. I was dealing with these injuries, probably more every 6 weeks. And if you didn't just say injury, if you took into account getting sick, I was getting sick every 6 weeks. It was unbelievable. And I went from like never, ever getting sick and until now I'm always getting sick. And now we look at, okay, Josh, what were those routines? You were getting in your training. You were doing jiu-jitsu. You were training hard. I didn't understand volume and intensity. I was literally doing 11 sessions every single week. So there were a few days that I would do. There was one day I would take completely off. And then there were, 2 days that I was only training once. I was training live every single session. Hard, live. Is doing a bunch of rounds, all weight classes, training hard. my body started breaking down on me at 24, 25, even probably at 22, I started to notice things. And then the craziest thing happened. And this wasn't a self-awareness thing. I mean, it was. This was I tell you guys, the right people tell you things. I was talking to my dad on the phone. I still remember it. I was at Walmart in somewhere random in Missouri because I was still working as a personal trainer in Missouri. And I had just lost at my first jiu-jitsu black belt adult competition. And I got beat down bad. And it was like, I know I'm a brand new black belt, but there is a little bit of a worry of, am I going to be able to compete with these guys? There was a little bit of fear of that. And my dad said, yeah, you're fighting professional athletes and you're a school owner, a full-time personal trainer, and you're trying to do this. We've got to figure out a way to get you out of personal training. And that was the case. The truth was the gym needed to grow, because if I couldn't get the gym to grow to the right amount, I wasn't going to get out of personal training. And if I couldn't get out of personal training, I was not going to have the time, energy, or especially sleep schedule that was going to help me be successful. Okay. And so when we're looking at our habits, sometimes we're just doing too much stuff. Sometimes we have to eliminate. We have to go, okay, I want to get to these places. And Josh says to create all these good habits to do it. I could create these 10 habits and it'll get me where I want to go. But do you have time? And then do you have energy? There's this book, I tell you guys about it often. It is called Effortless. There's also a book called Essentialism. It's the first book that Greg McKeown wrote. Effortless is the second. And both have a chapter dedicated to sleep. And it is like about how you should be focused on way less. You should be focused on your most important thing. And that's what priority means. You can only have one priority, is his argument. But at one point, he starts talking about the importance of sleep and how in our society, sleep is looked down upon. And I told you guys this story in order because I know that there are people who heard, man, Josh was waking up at 4 a.m. every day. Good for him. He was so tough. But maybe I was a little dumb because I was getting injured. I sleep till 7. I mean, I probably woke up at 6 today. I never can sleep in. I go to bed really, really early. But I prioritize sleep. I make sure that I am going to get good sleep. And for me, and I know this isn't the thing for everybody, but for me, good sleep is at least 8 hours. This is not an exaggeration. And keep in mind, our sleep routine was terrible for both Emily and I last week. We had our vacation Bible school. I'll give you guys the recap of that and whether or not who got their head shaved in the head shaving, how many kids we get contest between me and one of my purple belts that we were doing at Vacation Bible School. But we'll get into that. I have a bunch of episodes planned for when my baby comes. So then I can just like kind of auto post all those and they'll already be done. And that's going to be when we talk about branding and we talk about jiu-jitsu and the ideas of building a jiu-jitsu brand. We're going to highlight how everything is branding and everything is pro wrestling. And because they were one of the best at learning branding early in the modern age. And we'll look at a lot of highlights of that, pro wrestling and Vacation Bible School. And so be on the lookout for that one. Be ready to congratulate me because that episode will mean my baby's here. But anyway, we didn't sleep well because of Vacation Bible School. It was just really busy. And, people love to tell me things about the way I think, the way I can deliver, the way I can do a podcast, okay, for an hour and it not be very hard and try to keep your attention and me stay on track. I never stay on track, but you know what I'm saying. And I really would argue that it is because I'm rested. That is one of the biggest things that determines whether or not my podcast is good. For instance, maybe you think this episode sucks and so this is a bad example. I don't know. But for instance, I slept 12 hours last night. Let me tell you guys about my friend CBN. Okay, it's not CBD. CBD is CBD, CBG, both great for relaxing. CBN, on the other hand, is actually scientifically proven to help with sleep. Not just relax you to let you fall asleep, but actually help you sleep. And so I loaded up on the CBN last night, knowing I have not slept good in a long time, in like a week. And the problem with not sleeping good, and the problem with being so tired, is it can put your mind in a routine that makes it hard to fall asleep. And it can just, your mind will race at night. It can be really hard. You load up on some CBN, bro. You'll be good. You'll sleep. You'll sleep great. At least I do. I don't know. I've talked to other people. They say it doesn't help them as much. But for me, check it out. CBN. It's the great, weird little random note in the podcast. But on that, it's like making sure you're well rested allows you to accomplish really hard things, accomplish really hard tasks. Give an hour of true focus explaining something on a podcast. I don't have a lot of other mental energy after I do an hour and a half podcast. When I do a 3-hour interview, I don't have any mental energy. We'll go out to eat with the guys after a 3-hour interview, and I'll just be like, I have nothing to talk about. I'm so tired. I just need to go home, right? I just need to get to bed. But understanding that is, again, that is volume and intensity. When I did personal training, I was able to do more. The intensity for me and how much I had to stay engaged as a personal trainer is different than when I'm running and it's one-on-one versus when I'm running a 40-person jiu-jitsu class. The energy level is totally different. The intensity is different. And when I start to understand that, I can start to actually go, oh, I'm rested or I'm not rested. I hate how everything I talk about on the podcast turns into understanding not training so hard. But you guys know me on the podcast. I'm always going to highlight things that are important for me at the time. And, staying healthy and seeing the benefit of, now let's contrast it. I told you guys I wasn't being healthy at that time. 2019, I decide I need to grow the gym. By June, that was at the beginning, it was January of 19. By June of 19, I am at the number of students I need to be to pretty much go full time as a jiu-jitsu coach. And I did. And since then, we've definitely changed up habits. We definitely created some other things. Some other things that we added was I was not consistent on my lifts. I was kind of in charge of my own strength and conditioning. And again, sometimes I am too exhausted, not to work out, but to come up with a workout and to convince myself to work out. But we started a group of guys that all meet at the same time. We meet once a week. We lift once a week. And in that time, I wonder if I have any before and after pictures. I'm terrible about that stuff, so I probably don't. But in that time, I went from a fat 195-pound grappler to a very, very lean, for Josh McKinney, not for most people, but a very lean Josh at 181 pounds and being able to compete there and do better in competition as a black belt adult than I probably have almost at anything. I've placed at bigger tournaments than I did probably at anything but blue belt, and beaten bigger names than I did at any other belt. And so, there's definitely been a change. And for me, that change was those habits. Lifting once a week. I also stretch as a habit. It's not every single day. Technically, it is. Technically, I stretch every single day, but it's not always intense. Sometimes I am doing a minute of breathing in and out while I'm kind of just reaching and touching my toes, and that is my stretching for the day. Usually it's more than that, but sometimes, a lot of times it's just me going, oh my gosh, my body hurts so bad. And a little stretch in these places would help me. Stretching here, stretching my shoulders, stretching my quads, stretching whatever, right? Whatever is feeling it, just being, again, aware. So then I can exercise that habit. And now I don't even think about stretching. This is a habit I tried to start this year even. I've been stretching and doing yoga a lot, all of jiu-jitsu, but I've always done it in a too intense, goal-oriented fashion where I'm like, I'll do yoga every day. And I found a YouTube video and I'll just do this every day. And it lasts for 6 weeks. But you look at the future prediction, am I going to be flexible doing very intense yoga for 6 weeks and then not for the rest of the year? Or am I going to be more flexible doing a little bit every single day? I'm going to be more flexible doing a little bit every single day, right? And if not, if I get to a year and I still haven't increased that much in flexibility, I have a habit that I can now raise the intensity of and say, 2 days a week, I'm going to do a harder yoga session so I can get more. I don't know. Do you get gains in yoga? Get more yoga gains? I don't know. Who knows? So that is going to be kind of just the idea, the first predictor of your future. What are your daily habits? Let's kind of deconstruct this, and then we'll go to a commercial. So we kind of look at daily routine, the importance of it, the importance of building the right one, but you still got to have some goal. You still want to be a certain place. And what's interesting about goal setting in this way, goal setting with focus on actually building the habits to get you there, is habits change who you are. And so the goals that I had set for my podcast originally, those were goals of a guy who didn't understand podcasting like I do now. And I could easily get married to, no, this is what you said you were going to do, so you have to do it. But maybe I was stupid then. Maybe I was ignorant, meaning I did not know. There were just things I did not understand and was just not aware of. I think that's common. I think most of us would agree that we were probably pretty stupid in areas that we are no longer stupid in 5 years ago. And so why would we assume that today is the day that we are all knowing and smart? You won't. But if you slowly increase, you will change as a human being. And the goals that you set will now be better. If you think about a jiu-jitsu goal, if I explain goal setting to two people, one is a black belt and one is a white belt, and I say, hey, both of you go set a goal and create some ways to accomplish it, who do you think is probably going to have a better goal? It is probably going to be the black belt because they just have more context and more understanding in general. They are better when it comes to being on the mat. They know of it. They know of being on the mat. They know how to be good on the mat. And so when it comes to setting goals, the better you are at whatever you're looking at, the better you are at business, the more defined and better business goal you could set. And so don't get mad at yourself that you had a goal that wasn't as realistic, or a goal that just wasn't as beneficial as you thought it would be. Look at your goal and say, okay, these are the habits I need to get there. And when these habits start changing me as a person, my goal may tweak a little bit. My goal may change a little bit. Sometimes you set that goal because you were arrogant, and maybe you've added a little bit of humility. And so then you're like, that goal really isn't even a desire for me anymore. That goal is almost embarrassing to me at this point. Be sure to change as a person so then you can know whether or not to change your goals or change what direction you're being. But the only way to do any of that is with the right daily routine. That is one of my favorite John Maxwell quotes, and that's what I'll leave this one with, or leave this part for you guys with. It is that the secret to your success is in your daily routine. So eliminate the things that are not helping you get there and replace them with things that will. And just a reminder, we talk about it often, but you don't have to hit the habit at 100% to continue the habit. Sometimes you keep the habit and you reduce the scope. You say, okay, I have not missed 80 episodes of posting the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show on Thursdays. And when your computer isn't working and your audio interface isn't working and nothing else is working, you go, I will figure out a way, create a Zoom meeting where I just record audio so I can put out a podcast. I reduced the scope. People told me they liked the episode last week. It was so last minute. I didn't even plan for it at all. I had a different episode recorded that didn't record. And so I reduced the scope, but I kept the habit. And so nobody else fell out of the, hey, Thursdays, Josh is always posting. Eventually, we will get the Tuesday habit going, right? We will get that interview going, and it will be consistent again. And it will be ultra consistent. We won't, we won't miss. But that's how you look at it. And the reason that I have that is because the far off goals of the podcast are to get into certain numbers of listens. And I notice the listens going in certain ways when I post both. I notice the listens are way, way better when I post both. On both episodes, on both interviews and solo episodes, they both get more listens when I post twice. And that's the goal, is to get into this certain number of listens. I also, and this is, I guess I'll leave you guys with this as we move into our commercial break. I also, trying to be self-aware, I don't put a lot of thought into the commercials. I just make sure to have commercial space for when we have a certain number of listeners. But if people are going to be paying really good money to advertise on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, I better start doing a better job on these commercials, making them more fun, making them funnier, making ChatGPT make them more fun and funnier. So that being said, we're going to move into a commercial, and I have a funny one for you guys. I actually only read like the first 2 lines, and I go, yeah, this will be good. And so I had an idea to send to ChatGPT and then have them create the commercial. So hopefully it doesn't break your guys' heart that you are listening to an AI-generated commercial, but I promise we'll make it fun and worth your while. Let's bring it over to our old pal Josh McKinney for a commercial about the Gi Gazette. Here's Josh. Hey there, Jiu-Jitsu enthusiasts. It's me, the one and only Josh from the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. And boy, do I have something ridiculous to tell you. Have you ever found yourself grappling with the thought of missing out on the most epic Jiu-Jitsu newsletter in the world? Well, it's time to stop fighting that inner turmoil and listen up. The Gi Gazette, folks, a free newsletter so mind-blowing, so mind-twisting, and so mind-tickling that even the toughest black belts are tapping out in awe. Every week, you'll receive an exclusive scoop of jiu-jitsu wisdom delivered right to your inbox. From secret tips to improve your guard game to hilarious anecdotes from fellow jiu-jitsu enthusiasts, we've got it all. But wait, there's more. If you don't sign up for the Gi Gazette, you might as well be stuck in dreaded bottom mount for the rest of your life. And trust me, I've seen it. It is not a pretty sight. But don't worry. The Gi Gazette is here to rescue you. Subscribe now and you'll get your jiu-jitsu mojo boosted, your mind blown, and your skills sharpened like never before. So what are you waiting for? Join the Gi Gazette today. It's free, it's fabulous, it's ridiculously fun. Don't let this opportunity slip through your fingers like a slick submission. Sign up now. All right, guys, now we're back. Thank you, Josh and ChatGPT, for that great commercial that wasn't over the top at all. Let's look at the other 2 indicators of what your future is going to be. Let's look at your past. A lot of times, I talk to you guys about this loop that people get caught in, especially it's like the train too much injury loop. I've been caught in it a million times. I know how it goes. It's really hard to not get caught in. And so a really simple way to look at what your future is going to be in jiu-jitsu, in life, is going to be look at what your present is right now and look at what past habits got you there. If you are not where you want to be, if you were upset about where you are in life, and you can say, okay, well, you're a school owner, and I wanted to have 100 students, and I have 30, and I expected to have 100 by now. What are your habits that are bringing in new students? What do you do, or what part of your system is bringing in new students? Do you have habits that are losing you students? A lot of times you can look at your past and go, oh, wow, I've lost 10 people in the last 2 months because they hate that we shrimp up and down the mat. And the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show told them to quit the gym and they left. I hope that no one does that, but we're just giving an example, right? And so if that is the case, you have to be self-aware enough and say, you know what? I actually don't put much thought into the classes that I'm teaching. I need to get in the habit of making sure that I always care about the class that I'm going to teach, and I'm always engaged in it. And there are no big points where I'm just making people do stuff just to do it. And then what will start happening is you'll stop losing people. And those 10 people you lost in the last 2 months, they stay. And so this time you're at 40 a month later. Eventually, you will be at 100. You fix those habits that the past screwed you over on. That old past Josh, nobody hates me more than past Josh. Past Josh screws me over daily. And you know what his favorite saying is? Oh, that's a problem for future Josh. And as future Josh, I hate past Josh. He's so annoying. He's always screwing me over. And a lot of times, you could probably say that about yourself too. Say, yeah, I am not doing the things, especially as part of my routine, doing them daily. I'm not doing those things. I'm not doing my daily post that I was going to make on Facebook about the gym. I did it for 6 weeks. It got 2 students in, but I was like, oh no, it's only 2 students. Yeah, but if you made it part of your daily routine, in 6 weeks, it produced 2 students. Theoretically, without any compounding, in 60 weeks, it would produce, in a little over a year, it would produce how many students? It would produce 20. That would be 20 more than you had. That would be 20 closer to your goal. And you did it with routine. You did it with your habits, not with, I am going to go and buy 10,000 flyers and pass them out today and try to get to 100 students. Because let's say you do, you're going to lose students. They're going to be falling off. You didn't focus on a system. You didn't focus on habits. And now the only way that you know how to get students is to pass out 10,000 flyers. And unless you're doing that in your routine, you're not going to be gaining students. Your place isn't going to be growing. So that is like looking at your past. I know we looked at a jiu-jitsu school and are trying to hit as many different people as we can. But looking at your past and realizing, oh, wow, this isn't going, this is why things aren't going well. I look at where I'm at right now. I told you guys about lifting routine, about flexibility. Full disclosure, past Josh has been screwing me over these last 8 weeks that I haven't had to diet for middleweight. And so present Josh needs to get back on it, get back consistent with his habit of not gaining a pound a day. And so that's the goal. So I'm going to change the where we're at with it. So I'm going to combine these two. I think it'll make it easier. So the first thing was deconstructing your past experience, right? Looking at your past to look at your future. If certain habits led you to where you are today, and you don't want to be there, those habits will continue to lead you to that same place over and over. You'll just be better at that. Whatever it is that you don't want in your life, in your jiu-jitsu training, in your whatever, habits are going to be, the habits that you have, you can look at the past habits and say, hey, they got me here and I hate where here is. They will continue to keep me here. I have to change my habits, right? Now, the other side of past experiences, I'm starting to get where I want to be. It feels close. If you can actually, it's really hard. Like we're talking about self-awareness is hard. It's really hard to believe in yourself too and be aware of what habits you have and believe that they are going to get you to a place that you want to be. And you'll get these little openings. You'll get on the mat. You'll get these submissions on guys you never used to get. And you'll ask yourself, was he just tired? Did I deserve that? Should I have gotten that? And then maybe I'm crazy. And you'll usually, a lot of times you can even talk yourself out of your past, right? But if you have habits that you have been practicing, hey, I've been adding designated winner. I loved episode 198 of the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show, where Josh taught me how to create my own games of designated winner. And I love designated winner now. It's so much fun. I'm doing it all the time. You have this habit of doing designated winner, and you have this habit of focusing on new positions. Then you start beating everybody who you used to not be able to beat. It's not that you're crazy. If you have the habit to be able to look in the past and go, oh, that is where that success came from, was being consistent. A lot of times it lets you highlight that in your mind and go, well, I'll be more consistent. I'll really focus on this. I'll be even more creative with my thinking on these things. But if you just are finding success randomly, it's really tough, right? It's like this idea of winning the lottery. You see that, most people that win the lottery, it's not very good for them. They get some type of addiction, have some type of struggle, and it's usually bad. But those people were in the habit of playing the lottery. They were in the habit of taking whatever percentage of their money and betting it that they were going to be a 100 millionaire, right? And they do this over and over. And then one day they win, and that probably won't happen. You probably, most likely this is all rigged and nobody actually wins the lottery. But let's say you win and your habits were poor habits. They were gambling your money away. They were doing this or that was not good for you. And now you have money. Do you think like now everything's going to be good? Do you think now you're going to be an investor? You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to invest in some houses now. No, you don't have any habits that even gave you the knowledge. You have no idea how to do it. You don't even know how to protect your money. You don't even know what that means or the reason. You know how to spend money. You know how to risk money. Those are the habits that you are probably going to find. You're probably going to stick in those habits. You have no reason not to. You're rich. Like people will lose insane amounts of money because they take the habits that they had to be poor and then they apply them when they get a bunch of money. When they get that settlement. I'm in Granite City. Everybody's got a settlement in Granite City that they're waiting to come in. I'll tell you this. If I had a settlement discount at my gym, like, hey, dude, the check is in the mail right now. It's coming and I'm going to pay in full for 10 years. If I had that deal, I don't know, man. I could retire. Everybody's got a settlement coming in, right? But here's the problem. That settlement ain't going to change anything. You've already spent that money, dog. In your mind, you have already said, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this. You have spent that money. It is gone. And what can you hope for? You don't know how to make it. You can hope for another settlement. You better go to McDonald's and hope they don't have wet floor signs. Start slipping, right? These are like understanding the difference of a goal, the amount of money you have, and a habit that actually gets you to that amount of money, and that habit that changes you, right? The book that we read, I think it said that habits dictate character, right? Character is kind of who you are. Habits dictate who you are. They change who you are. And looking at your past experiences is a really easy way. And then where you are now, your current predicament, is a really easy way to say, hey, am I going to continue to struggle this way? Or am I doing the right stuff? And you're going to have to tweak and figure things out. And like I said, you're learning little more bits at a time. So maybe those habits you originally set weren't perfect and you have to tweak them. But you make sure you're consistently moving towards wherever you want to, and you do that through the right habits. You also, and I've referenced this, hinted at this 7 or 8 times in this episode, surrounding yourself with the right people. I don't know why I wrote like-minded individuals. That's not the right term. You don't have to surround yourself with people that think like you. I would disagree with that. I would say Kyle Watson and I, our thought processes on things are totally different. We are not like-minded, but we do share a lot of values, right? And so then even though we think differently on how to get better and how to do this, how to do that, we have good values. Our values match up, right? We also both care about each other's success. That is one of the biggest things, is like, your success is my success. So I will do everything I can to help you. And I learned that habit through my coach. Kyle has always been that way. There has never been something that wasn't shared with me because Kyle thought of me as a threat. There has never been something that wasn't, helped. There's never a time that he didn't help me, right? And you look at, I see that he still is that way with his students, all of them, none of them are near as good as me or as cool as I am. But he's still that way. Shout out Watson Martial Arts. He's still that way with his students. And so when I look at guys like that, I look at, my dad will be back on the podcast when we start doing we start pushing this strength and conditioning program and this routine and these ideas. I'll make sure to have him back a few times in a row. So you guys will get to hear from Steve in an in-person setting for the first time. And so that'll be really fun when we do that. But I always highlight those guys as my 2 main mentors. They, most of these habits that I'm bragging to you guys about, most of them my dad told me I needed to create. Hey, we need to do this. You're not getting here because of ... He would analyze my past. And then he would say, this is where what you need to be doing to get here in the future. And I had Kyle. Kyle would do the same thing. Oh, I love these things, but that doesn't make sense because remember when you tried it this way and it wasn't there? What didn't work? So surrounding myself with like-minded individuals that can analyze my habits, that can, like I told you guys, help me stay consistent. I have a group of guys that we all lift together. We've all had these crazy improvements. I can't wait to share this instructional with you guys because I know it'll get everybody excited just about everything we have coming out at Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu because the quality is going to improve in the same way that like the podcast went from me on a $80 mic in doing Zoom interviews with people in Zoom to the studio is now. That is what the like our products, at least the quality of the product is going to increase too on Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. Super excited about that. Sign up for the Geek Gazette, dog. But that is, you find the right people and maybe they help you keep a habit. I know that I'm going on Mondays to lift because I know that if I don't, the boys are going to be like, hey, where's Josh? Why isn't Josh here? Does he not care about lifting weights? Does he not care about being strong? Does he not care about being a champion? We better get on him about it. Hey, Josh, been 2 weeks. Haven't seen you at the gym. Have been lifting. Look a little small. Look weak. Yeah, past Josh is screwing me over, dude. Got to get back in the habit. And having people like that, keeping that habit. Oh my gosh, I kept that habit on Monday. It was horrible. Monday this week, like I told you guys, I was dead tired. This was before I got my 12 hours of sleep last night. And trying to keep the habit of, all right, I'm showing up, I'm here to lift, and I'm here to lift hard. It was terrible, man. It was horrible. But I'm glad I did it because I've had so many weeks of that, where I've traveled the whole week. I've, coached the whole week. I have no voice. I'm dead tired. I have every excuse. Don't want to do this. and it's Monday morning. Well, it's time to lift. It's time for our lift, and we would do it. And the amount of injuries that I've had in the last 2 years, besides not tapping injuries, I've had none. I've had 2 not tapping injuries, but that's just more of who I am as a person than anything. And to be fair, one of them, I felt like I tapped fast enough. But anyway, back to health. Like I went for my first 2 years at black belt to I had rib injuries that I've described them to other people, and people with rib injuries have been like, dude, I've never heard of one being that bad. That's crazy. You should have definitely went to the doctor. But I listened to my buddy Miles instead, and he taught me some breathing exercises. I gained more flexibility. I lost weight. All these things were habitual things. They were not things that I just did overnight. It took me a year to go. Okay, let me say this. It took me 8 months of focus and diet to get to make middleweight. And then it took me another close to a year, probably another 8 months, to get to where I could consistently make middleweight and actually felt good at the weight class. The first time I did it, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I really struggled to make it on that one. But again, I just hadn't been in the habits long enough. I stayed in the habit 8 more months after that, and I started to feel really good. I started to be able to make weight. And not only that, it got to the point at the end of middleweight this year, there was not a match that I go, hey, this guy felt stronger than me. And I know I fought steroid users, but there was not a match of guys that I would get to grapple. And I lost matches. I would just lose matches because those guys are better at jiu-jitsu than me, but they weren't out-strengthening me. And that was happening a lot at medium heavyweight. And to go and say, 2 years of habit change took me from being a semi-professional to a professional athlete. And that's really how it feels. That's really how it looks, is the right habits, the right routines, and then surrounding myself and listening to the right people. A lot of times, and this is why I didn't say this earlier, I think this is the takeaway of the podcast, okay? We talked about how hard self-awareness is. A lot of times, your homies recognize your bad habits. And they say, Josh will not stop doing live rounds with the ultra heavyweights. He always gets hurt when he does this. And even they're tired of it. And they're like, they want to yell at me about it and say, dude, you are not practicing the right habits. You have to get better at this. If you don't fix this, this will be the result forever. Most of the time, we create our own monsters. I literally just admitted it to you guys a bit ago. I said I've been dieting, been really consistent. I've been eating bad in the last probably 8 weeks. Just have not been eating good. That's me creating my own monster. I'm going to have to lose that weight again. It's going to suck even worse. It's going to be so hard. I'm going to be so frustrated. But oftentimes, we create our own monsters. I have guys at my gym who have no trouble telling me that I'm fat. Wow, Josh, you're looking. My student Nick told me literally seconds after my last match this year, I just win. We're all hanging out, and he says, yeah, you were looking lean a few weeks ago, but you're looking a bit inflamed now. First of all, that's kind of offensive. That's my business, okay? That's fat shaming. But having the homies that'll actually tell you, that'll actually deliver that to you. And a lot of times the way to do that is when they deliver that information to you, accepting it. When people tell me when people that I trust say, hey, you're failing here, I try my best to be in the habit of immediately going, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe that. I try to be in the habit of, yeah, they must be right. Because I know I'm not self-aware. I know I miss out things all the time. And so when my wife says, you are doing ... or you're not doing that ... it immediately hurts my feelings. I'm immediately defensive. I can feel it. But when I respond in kindness and say, thank you for telling me that, babe, you're right, I'm going to work on fixing that, it strengthens our relationship. And the next time, my wife feels so much more comfortable actually bringing up something important to me. But if I freak out, she will not bring up important things to me. And so I lose that part of our relationship because I can't take criticism. And so a lot of times you could even ask, hey, buddy, I have been dealing with this. Is there anything that I'm doing that you think is causing these things? You know, maybe these are mental things. You know, sometimes, and I really try to be careful about what I highlight on the show, because I don't want people to, everything becomes life advice when you talk long enough, right? About jiu-jitsu. It always gets related somewhere to life, just so we have another perspective on how to look at it. But I don't want people to be like, oh yeah, I should really be just trusting Josh for all my life advice, right? Like I don't know you, and I definitely don't know you like your friends know you. And a lot of times, if you could just ask them, hey, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, I've been struggling with it for years. Do you have any thoughts on why I deal with this? And having the humility to not interrupt, right? We talked about the 7 habits of highly effective grappler, to think first, to understand, and not to be understood. Don't tell them your perspective or, oh, well, the only reason I do that is because of, no, just listen, understand. And then you can create habits to help you fix it. And if not, if you want to ignore this, that's fine. I don't care. Suck forever. It doesn't hurt me. Just make sure you keep listening to the show. Don't stop listening to the show. But it is your business if you want to continue to deal with those same things. You know, and again, these things are hard to correct. This isn't, I'm giving it to you matter of fact, but I'm trying to explain. I struggle with these things too. I'm just starting to get all right at these things in my mind. Usually that's when you realize that you're not good at it at all. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Let's just summarize everything at the end, okay? So we had our 3 main predictors: daily routine, past experiences, and your circle of people that you keep around. They always say like your 5 strongest relationships, your 5 strongest friendships. And it's like you look at all these things. Yes, they are all 3 separate things. We highlighted them as 3 separate things. But your daily routines and your ability to deconstruct past experiences a lot of times are determined by who you are around. If I am around all my friends who all we do is eat together, and I'm trying to diet and I'm struggling with the diet, it becomes a lot harder to diet, right? And they're eating, and I know, like, for instance, if I'm at vacation Bible school all week with all my church friends, and let's be honest, church people, you tend to eat too much in general, And so we know that to be true. And then when you have just unlimited candy, and then I perform on stage, I have like a 2-hour break in between my second time being on stage. My circle wasn't the best for not eating, It wasn't the best for a good diet. When you're with all your buddies who are cutting weight for jiu-jitsu competition, it's not hard to eat well. It really isn't. You'll notice when guys are dieting and cutting weight, the whole table orders salads, even the guys that aren't, a lot of the time. And it's because when you're around a group of people, it's just easier to do what they do. And so you find people that have the habits you want to create, or that can help you create the habits that you want. Because maybe your coach has certain habits that he creates in your training that he doesn't do alongside of you, but he still helps you, right? You have that mentor that helps you do that. But your life, your future, 5 years from today's episode of the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show, it is going to be predicted by those three things: who you're with, what you do daily, and then how much you can tweak from what you've done in the past. We look at it from Jiu Jitsu, right? Your training schedule. You want something that keeps you consistent. You want habits that keep you there week in and week out. Not habits that make you feel like you got a good workout today and then you're injured. Habits that keep you healthy so you can stay what? Consistent. You've got to be consistent. We talk about jiu-jitsu progression. We talk about the hack to getting good at everything is two things. You understand it and you get reps doing it. And then usually you go back and forth on those two things. You understand it deeper because you've gotten more reps. You understand it deeper because you've gotten more reps. Now you need to tweak the reps because you understand it so deeply. So that's all our habits are, is us getting reps. Every time, I'm trying to think of other habits I've tried. Okay, here's one that I've never been able to add. Like every time I try to learn Portuguese, I have so much trouble creating an actual habit for it. I have so much trouble actually getting in the routine of learning Portuguese. It is not hard for me to do the sessions on Duolingo. I'm far enough in that it's pretty easy at this point. I just don't do it. And so I can do what most people do in the jiu-jitsu space who aren't progressing at all and go, well, I'm a level 2 in Duolingo, and then tell people like, yeah, I know that stuff. I already know that stuff, but I can't execute it, obviously. But yeah, I know all that stuff. Or should I be honest with myself and be like, hey, I suck at this habit. I have to figure out a way to fix this habit or I will never know Portuguese. Either that or just have to convince everybody who speaks Portuguese to start speaking English. One of those two things. But it would be creating a habit, right? And again, I've been trying to learn Portuguese for like 7 years. Still can't do it. Still can't create the habit. If anyone has any hack on how to get your habit of learning a new language set, do it well, especially when you don't have many people that speak the language. That's something that I really notice. I think that there's a level of like, I don't get, we talk about how you're not interested. A lot of times it's not motivation, it's interest. And I noticed that I don't have that right. I don't have the interest in learning the language that I should, that I know I want to have. I know I desire to have that interest, but I just don't have it. And I can't figure out a way to get there. Random little thought on something else I suck at. So let's go ahead and we'll finish today's episode. I know, like I said, this was going to be a wild one, meaning it's very, very conceptual. It's very, very random. You probably only picked up random little one-sentence nuggets from it. But hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully you like it. Let's take it over to Josh to finish out today's episode. And that is the episode. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I always like doing ones on habits. I've really been focused on how important that is because I see it so often. Guys with potential fall short of where they want to be. And it is because of habits. Whether they have too many other things and they just do not have enough time to create the habits and get the rest that they need to accomplish what they want. Whether it's that they're in the wrong habits, that they just do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Or maybe they are on the right habits and they're on the right track, and it's just a matter of sitting in those habits, keep believing in yourself, keep winning one day at a time. Right? The simple saying is Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It probably was by the aliens, but maybe it wasn't built in a day. But I don't know. I don't think Rome wasn't built by aliens, right? Rome was built by humans, right? It was just the pyramids, sorry, getting out of getting a little random on the thoughts. I told you guys, I required 12 hours of sleep last night, so I'm probably still not fully rested if that was the case. And I start getting conspiracy theory when that happens. But like, cause who even built these pyramids? You know what I mean? Like, okay, sorry. Yeah, let's go ahead and finish out today's episode. As I told you guys, I have one of the most helpful episodes for the jiu-jitsu athlete, for the jiu-jitsu hobbyist, for someone wanting to do jiu-jitsu and wants something that no one else knows about. I mean, of course, some people do, but it seems like nobody else is aware of, that is a superpower. I can tell you that now that I have done breath work for 2.5 years, maybe a little less, 2 years and some months. And I can tell you without a doubt, it has helped my injury prevention. I do not have rib injuries anymore. And it's a lot of it I really do look at breath work for. I do not get nervous to compete. And he actually even gives me some updates on me taking the breathing method too far in the episode, and it was actually causing a few problems in competition, and he highlighted them, and it was that same self-awareness thing. I didn't even have anything to say. I was just like, oh my gosh, you're right. I actually thought I was doing right. Oh my gosh. Basically, he told me I was getting too high on my own supply. And so that's definitely a fun little thing that he talks about. And just the ability to, you have this superpower with breath work, and it's an actual technique. It's an actual controllable thing to be able to control your heart rate, your blood pressure, really control your cardio, and control your nervousness and your anxiety. It's unbelievable. I just cannot stress enough how helpful this episode is going to be to you guys. That's all I have for you today. I hope you guys liked today's episode. I can't wait to hear from you guys, talk to you guys again on Tuesday. And yeah, that's all I have. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.